The thing that was great about being a crusader was not the acts of holy fury, nor the dedication of oneself to seeing the Emperor's justice done. No, the very best thing about being a crusader was the enormous power sword. Reginald here. If there was any weapon that sits at the top of the Zealot tech tree, it has to be the Relic blade. So I'm thinking a tutorial for this weapon would be worth it. Not only that, but I'm going to cover every detail I've managed to figure out for both of these weapons, and I'm darn well going to tell you which is better. Fortunately, as a playtester, I've had a better than average chance to get to know these weapons. There are two patterns of Relic blade, the Mark 10 and the Mark 2. Purpose in kit. The Relic blade is a universal frontline weapon. It's not the best at heavy elite busting or monstrosity slaying, but it is very good. It is one of the best at light elite busting, and it is fantastic into hordes of any kind. What it lacks in mobility, it makes up for in raw fighting power, and safety through kills, stagger, and excellent reach. Basics. The Relic blades are Zealot exclusive two-handed weapons and are a new type of power weapon, featuring a heat mechanic. Rather than simply slamming on the power button over and over every time you want to use it, the weapon can be toggled on and swung freely until a heat cap is reached, at which point the weapon overloads and is locked out of being reactivated until reaching zero heat. Additionally, the weapon may be activated mid-combo, and activation counts as blocks until the animation is complete, allowing deliciously smooth transitions from unempowered attacking to empowered attacking. Let me say that I do truly hope this mechanic is ported over to the Veterans Munitorum Power Swords because it feels great. The Relic blades, like all melee weapons, have a different stats table for each swing, so I will click through them quick so you can pause and study if you want. Here is the Mark 10. You can see each of these swing types' base stats in your weapon's inspection screen by selecting Inspect, View Attack Breakdowns, and clicking through each swing type. I will be discussing the swing types and patterns in detail later. And here's the Mark 2. Strike Down is basically elite-focused single target attacks, either overheads or stabs. The Vanguard strikes are basically horde clear horizontal sweeps, good for lots of chaff. It has access to the following blessings. The Mark 10 has easier access to consistent sweeping horde clear attacks and this sweet looking inquisitorial eye on the blade, while the Mark 2 is a bit more elite oriented with quick and hard hitting late strike downs and this awesome uppercut. Both are excellent weapons with really fun and involved movesets. By the way, both weapons have 4 dodges and feel basically the same as the Eviscerator in terms of mobility. Build recommendations. Here is the sword I have basically been using in both marks. Modifiers. For both marks, the ideal stats distributions are 80s in everything except mobility, with a dump stat to 60 on mobility. Perks. My current view on perks is that Carapace is absolutely a must-take on this weapon, especially going into Havocs, while the second perk, Slot, is open to debate and preference. The upshot of Unyielding is doubling down on pretty solid unyielding damage into bosses, and with some sets of talents, will get you to the 2-shot headshot range on Reapers. Flak doesn't seem to have much value, even for the unpowered attacks, except possibly in Havoc where the health pools are a bit thicker sometimes, but I haven't been able to test that with any rigor. Otherwise, I didn't find any interesting breakpoints worth mentioning. Maniac was also a bit lackluster with only improved hits into mutants when unpowered, depending on talents netting you 1 less attack into mutant bodies but not really doing much into ragers. Again, Havoc may change your selection here. Unarmored sees more consistent kills on Dreg Gunners and that's about all. Based on this testing, I'd probably favor Unyielding to help vacate monstrosities better, but I see space for choosing a utility perk here like Crit Chance or Sprint Efficiency. I did try weak spot damage and that didn't seem to do much like it always does. Let's talk blessings. First, I'm going to recommend 2 that I think offer the most advantage to the player. Then we can rank order them as far as I've been able to test them. The 2 blessings I recommend by default are Cranial Grounding and Rampage. Both Cranial Grounding and Rampage provide damage bonuses to both the unpowered and empowered state of the weapon. Cranial Grounding is also able to moderately improve uptime on the empowered state of the weapon. Beneath these 2 blessings is our singular A-tier choice, Wrath. Wrath is a solid blessing. It increases cleave in a manner that is quite noticeable, especially into heavy mass while empowered. You can get up to 250% cleave on chain hits into targets. If you miss or perform an alternative action, you will lose all stacks instantly. At max stacks, you can cut through muties and bulwarks and reapers into secondary targets, dealing damage up to your cleave damage cap. Anything past that cleave damage cap can potentially still receive stagger. This increases overall safety and improves damage delivery across groups, but it will cost you the highs and empowered time consistent you get out of Cranial Grounding. An argument can can be made in favor of Wrath, so pick it if you want. Next are B tier blessings, Energy Leakage and Counterattack. Energy Leakage provides you with up to 20% strength as your weapon heat climbs. Plus strength is better than plus damage, but ultimately you get the most of that 20% value well into the upper realm of your heat bar, so you only get it for a few swings, and nothing for unempowered attacks the rest of the time. Still, this is better than most other options. Counterattack provides you a maximum of 10% attack speed for 3 seconds every 8 seconds, if you perfectly block an incoming attack. This would, in theory, work with the special being able to also block attacks, so you could use it for that basis. Attack speed is a direct DPS and safety buff to this weapon, so that's good, but the condition to activate and duration is somewhat onerous, requiring you to have a great timing for incoming attacks in order to provide a relatively slow weapon moderately faster swings. It's not bad as a blessing, but it's not great. Not least because it's going to be hard to trigger against crushers and maulers some of the time. Still, it's a really cool idea, and I think it's worth trying in case you like it. For our C tier blessings, we have Energy Transfer, Overload, Heat Sink, and Siphon. Energy Transfer operates on that same perfect block every 8 seconds activation condition, but then for 5 seconds speeds up heat dissipation by 5% and reduces heat climb by 20%. This is not an awful blessing, because it can have value on both sides of the active and inactive state, but it's not any better than Cranial Grounding at max stacks, and offers no damage value with the fiddly activation mechanic. Heat Sink is 10%, cooldown buff on weak spot kill or critical kill, which, okay, easy to get, but not very impactful. It helps, but not enough to be better than plus damage and heat climb reduction at the same time in Cranial Grounding, at least not in my estimation. Overload only activates a weapon on lockout, so you get no value if you turn your weapon off yourself. It has something like a 3 meter stagger range and only does light stagger, so barely enough to lightly stun the average baddie. It also reduces your max heat by 20% instantly, and that's not a bad boon. The problem is not the activation condition, because yeah, it's fine, and honestly there's really no value in avoiding lockout most of the time. The problem is that this isn't better than Cranial Grounding, and a little AoE stagger isn't even really noticeable. Finally, Siphon. At high level play, you usually don't need a toughness pump blessing on your weapon. I'm not saying there's no value proposition here, but I've beaten Havocs without it, and it maybe would have saved me one time I can think of. Maybe. Most of the time you get enough toughness to Zealot from the dodge toughness talents and default melee toughness regeneration, especially with a big cleaving sword like this one. A blessing that only adds toughness into horrors where you are least likely to need it just doesn't impress. If you are a lower tier player and you are struggling with the game, this is a good crutch blessing, however, so keep that in mind. It's a good way to keep yourself alive while you're still learning some of the mechanics. Lastly, our dumpster tier, Devastating Strike. Look, this weapon is too good at killing to leave around a lot of bleed from Scourge, which is a talent on the Zealot tree. And it's relatively slow swing speed, so you're not getting amazing top tier crit rates out of this weapon. You can certainly run Blazing Piety, but even still, your crit rate's not going to be gargantuan just because you're not going to be swinging as fast as other weapons. But crits are the only time that you get that advantage, and it's an only 80% cleave advantage. Can you get a crit every 5 seconds to take full advantage of this blessing? I don't know, I didn't check. But can you just take Wrath and guarantee 50% within 2 swings and then 50% more every swing after until you hit your cap? Yeah, you can. Wrath is more consistent and its activation condition is easier and its cleave cap is higher. Enough said. Normally in my melee weapon tutorials, I do swing combos here, and they are interesting and complex on both of these weapons. But it's going to take me 6 minutes to get through all of it, so let's talk performance data and weapon ranking, then tips and tricks first, then we'll loop back into swing patterns. I'll remind you, you can leverage the timestamps if you want to listen to that section now. Weapon ranking and data. Let's take a look at these weapons and judge which is the best of the two and how does this stack up to the other weapons. Fortunately, I've had the time to run this thing through my testing system. If you're not familiar with my methodology, I will link a video on the subject below. Anyway, let's go through the data in a rapid fashion. We're going to compare this weapon to its nearest counterparts, the Eviscerator and Vet Power Sword. My research has consistently shown that Martyrdom provides the best possible results for any given melee weapon on Zealot, so comparing apples to apples as best as possible, here are the time to kill leaderboards on my meat targets. Here are the Horde numbers, the Rager numbers, and the Crusher numbers, as well as some data on a Plague Ogryn, which is just stationary, just to give us a sense of our output against bosses. First, let me just say the numbers are extremely impressive. For every single enemy type, this weapon is a tippy-top performer. However, somehow, it's not completely unhinged from other top performers. Still, it was going to be hard to deliver a fair and balanced balanced package out of a two-handed power sword without turning it into a nerf stick and making it feel bad. Speaking of top performing, I know at the beginning of this video I said this weapon wasn't the very best at heavy elite, as in crushers busting, but let me clarify that. In the specific situation of a damnation health pool and maximizing the usage of Fury of the Faithful and Martyrdom, yes, it performs DPS wise near the very top, if not the top itself. At the same time, it doesn't have the kind of mobility the currently silly dueling sword has to offer, so its safety across a whole game or in tight situations is in engaging the enemy directly and staggering them, leveraging the long reach of the weapon as well. But it is not able to play keep away like lighter weapons nor kite effectively. It just doesn't have the dodges or dodge distance for that. This is a fighting man's weapon. You also really start to feel the 3 to 4 hits it takes you to land a clean kill on a crusher or reaper or bulwark, and any missed headshots really slow you down. You don't have easy one-shots on tap with this weapon like you do with, say, a bloodletter chain axe and the like. You're going to be felling trees one chop at a time, and when the going gets rough, you're going to notice it. On the upshot, on Martyrdom at least, but also when using Inexorable in my experience, this weapon has pretty impressive unempowered performance into hordes, but it's still faster and safer with empowered attacks. On big enemies though, powered attacks are the obvious way to go with great damage properties and times to kill, which I view as a good way to handle the empowered versus unempowered breakdown. It'd be a shame to have a two-handed power sword performing like garbage into hordes just because it was still a giant two-handed sword and it was turned off at the moment. Okay, now that we've read the data, which of these two weapons is better? Well, both of these weapons are excellent and extremely competitive with one another in actual TTKs. So how do we decide which is better? There's two criteria we can use: ease of use and cool factor. The Mark 10 has it for ease of use, specifically because the attacks are always right where you want them. You always have exactly what you need when you need it. Light attacks are quick and provide easy access to wide sweeps for horde clear on demand, and they chain into heavy wide sweeps which can let you keep ragers or maulers pinned and stagger locked by the bushel, while the first two heavy attacks provide you with powerful overheads and loop into the light stab. The problem with the Mark 2 here is access to what you need. The two not looping heavy sweeps on the Mark 2 force you into using heavy 2 light 3, but light 3 doesn't stagger into ragers, so you lose safety, but you have to start fighting into hordes with a kind of slow heavy attack or use a narrow overhead light spam into L3. It's less ideal than a quick sweeping light. The Mark 10 has great access to nice heavy overheads at the start of its heavy chain, and they can be looped back into easily with just a light attack. But on the Mark 2, there's no way to get those heavy overheads for big nasties out right away. You have to use your light attacks, but those very light attacks lack stagger into the big boys, so they're fundamentally less safe even though they're efficient damage dealers. Both weapons have great movesets that are fun and involved, and I actually really enjoy the stylish attack sequences on the Mark 2. But if we are going to rank order, we are forced to pick based on objective measures. The Mark 10 has it, not by very much mind you, but it technically has it. Truly use whichever you prefer, as both of these weapons are stellar. Now the other criteria is cool factor. We need to exclude cosmetics here for a minute because the Inquisitorial Eye on the Mark 10 wins a lot of points from me. If we disregard cosmetics for a moment and just look at which weapon has the cooler attack pattern, we gotta give it to the Mark 2. This thing has swift swinging light overheads for sniping baddies, with excellent damage even in carapace, and then that uppercut, ugh, damn. Both of these weapons have access to stabs, but only the Mark 2 has this looping chain that can go from L1 into heavy 3, or light 2 into heavy 4, and back around again, or instead do a satisfying light 1, heavy 3, heavy 4, light 1, light 2, heavy 3, heavy 4 chain that just feels so right. Not to say, apparently. The Mark 10 just feels a bit more simple-minded with all the easy access to big cleaving swings. It's still a great and robust weapon, but to be fair, the swing pattern is just not nearly as cool. Tips and tricks. The heavy sprint stab is actually pretty super strong. Don't forget to use it, especially if running Fury of the Faithful or Stealth. Make sure to give yourself plenty of time to empower from a cold start before going into a sprint stab, as the animation chain is long. Doing a quick attack unempowered and then activating a weapon is actually a much faster and safer way to get into the powered chain if you need it. Go for the feet on bulwarks when trying to finish them off after a good hit or two. Secret meta, cut off their legs? If you're doing more challenging content, please keep in mind this weapon has decent sprint stamina, but it lacks good sprint speed or dodge distance. This means you will struggle to keep ahead of packs of enemies. Taking a pistol, like the bolt pistol, my personal favorite, will give you the movement advantage that can afford you kiting capacity in high level content. It is less ideal due to the lack of block while holding it, but you can play keep away a lot better. If you're playing Havoc, I have found that Grievous Wounds actually pairs well with this to allow you to continue to stagger enemies even though they received significant stagger reduction buffs from various things in Havoc. This allows you to use the power sword to its greatest advantage as a stagger stick against certain groups of ragers or crushers or whatever. Swing patterns. I'm going to break down the swings and patterns of each weapon in turn. These weapons have complex swing patterns, so if you just want to know what to do, skip to the key combos timestamps. Starting with the simpler one, the Mark 10. Light attacks. There are 3 light attacks. Light 1, Vanguard, right to left. Light 2, Vanguard, left to right. Light 3, strike down, stab. This is a linear chain that simply restarts if spamming lights. On its own, it's great into hordes, either empowered or unempowered. The Light 3 stab has excellent anti-armor properties and solid damage, but has almost no cleave, making it a wasted throw into hordes. Heavies. There are 4 heavy attacks. Heavy 1, strike down, overhead from right down to the left. Heavy 2, strike down overhead from left down to the right. Heavy 3, Vanguard, right to left. Heavy 4, Vanguard, left to right. This specific heavy chain only allows the player to access Heavy 1 and Heavy 2 one time. It then locks the player into a looping Heavy 3 and Heavy 4 Vanguard pattern, unless some other attack is used. It's important to understand that Heavy 1 links into L2, while Heavy 2 links into L3. L3 links back into Heavy 1. Once you're in the Heavy 3, Heavy 4 rotation, you need to pay attention to which swing you did. Heavy 3 will return to horizontal L2, but Heavy 4 loops back into L3, which takes you out of the horizontal chain. It's not a great thing to do in a horde. Push attack. The push attack is quite handy on this weapon. It gives direct access to an L3 style stab, but it also chains accordingly from the stab into either Heavy 2 or Light 2. By using push attack into Heavy 2, you can easily switch from horde clear into elite sniping. By doing push attack into Light 2, you can stab, sweep, stab, or stab L2, sweep into Heavy 3, sweep for more horde clear. Push follow up. If you choose to push but don't attack, you can follow up with either L2 or go directly into Heavy 4, either of which allow a rapid transition from an elite smiting combo to a horde clearing combo with fewer moves than the push attack. Sprint attack. The sprint attack offers a unique additional 2 swings, a light uppercut and a heavy held thrust or stab. The light uppercut has relatively weak properties. It exists. The heavy sprinting stab is quite the heavy hitter, especially while empowered. It offers a slightly increased sprint speed while held. The stab chains exactly as L3, but the uppercut takes the place of L1. Special attack usage. The special attack for this weapon turns the power sword into the power mode. Once active, it massively increases damage, cleave, and cleave stagger. Empowered heavy attacks gain the ignore stagger resistance trait, making them able to stagger ragers and crushers out of their attack chains. The attack chain is unchanged, however, so all the key combos will be the same. Key combos. For the Mark 10 Relic Blade, there are really 3 basic combos that you will use most often. For basic light horde clear work, a simple light spam combo works wonders. The only time this combo runs into a bit of trouble is when dealing with masses of elites, especially ragers, who are not easily staggered by the sweeping light attacks. When there are only 1 or 2 non-rager elites or specialists, however, this combo offers up a nice little stab to sneak into their ribs between smiting the horde. Well, usually headshots are better. The one thing I did notice is the combo isn't as safe when using Blazing Piety builds as other higher attack speed builds, in which case I recommend using the second horde clear combo. The second combo is light, light, heavy, heavy, repeat. This combo is excellent into basically everything that isn't an Ogryn. You'll just repeat the heavy attacks over and over until everything's dead. It'll stagger 3 or 4 ragers out of their attack chains depending on your talent pool when swinging activated attacks, of course, and it mulches hordes in a hurry. For elites, you're going to want to use heavy, heavy, light. Just slap heads with this and you're good. It's the highest damage combo available to you. It's good into bosses as well. The only exception to this is when you're fighting a lot of ragers, in which case you'll want to use those heavy sweeping attacks to keep them all staggered and pinned down. Let's do the Mark II swing patterns. Lights. There are 3 light attacks. Light 1, which is a strike down overhead right to left. Light 2, which is a strike down overhead left to right. Light 3, which is a vanguard diagonal right to left. This light chain locks out Light 1 after its first usage and sticks you into L2, L3 until you reset or block cancel. The L2, L3 combo is okay into hordes, but the star of the show is the super quick L1, L2 initiation, which has great properties into armor, even carapace, and is good on yielding too, and it comes out fast for such a big weapon. By itself, it can 2-shot scap gunners while unempowered, and empowered, it's great into any elite. Heavies. There are 4 heavy attacks. Heavy 1, Vanguard horizontal right to left. Heavy 2, Vanguard horizontal left to right. Heavy 3, strike down uppercut from the right lower side up through the left side. Heavy 4, strike down overhead from the left side down through the right side. This specific heavy chain only allows the player to access Heavy 1 and Heavy 2 one time. It then locks the player into a looping Heavy 3 and Heavy 4 strike down pattern unless you leverage a light or block cancel. Heavy 1 links into Light 2, which connects to Heavy 3 and locks you into the Heavy 3, Heavy 4 chain. Heavy 2 can be block cancelled and reset into Heavy 1, or you can leverage the diagonal L3, which is a great horde combo. H3 connects to L2, and Heavy 4 connects to L1. Push attack. The push attack on this weapon is designed for horde work more so than the Mark 10. It provides a quick sweep from left to right. This changes to Heavy 1, so you can get several changed sweeps if you're willing to spend stamina and keep it up. Push follow-up. The push follow-up leverages either L2 or H2. This allows you to choose your own adventure for either more smiting or more sweeps. Sprint attack. The sprint attack offers the same light uppercut and heavy attack stab as the Mark 10. The stab changes into L2 if you want elite work, or into H2 if you want more horde work. The uppercut chains into L2 or H2 in the exact same way. Special attack usage. The special attack for this weapon has the same properties as the Mark 10, so I won't repeat myself here. Key combos. For the Mark 2 Relic Blade, there are really 3 basic combos that you will use most often. 4 basic light horde clear work. A simple light spam combo does work, but it's much safer and more efficient to leverage Heavy 1, Heavy 2, Light 3. Looking through Heavy 2 into Light 3, repeating through Heavy 2, Light 3 until everything is dead. The one challenge with this combo is that Light 3 doesn't have great elite damage, and none of its light attacks, even empowered, have enough stagger to put a Rager to sleep. So there's a little window between Light 3 and Heavy 2 where you can get attacked by Ragers if you're not on high alert. Elites. This weapon shines into elites with satisfying and snappy combos. The Light 1 to Light 2 combo alone is quite strong in individual targets and for quick boss damage while empowered. But if you're looking to maximize damage output and safety via stagger, you're going to want a heavy combo. You can chain into them a number of ways. Light 1 chains into Heavy 4, while Light 2 chains into Heavy 3. Both are great for single target work. And once you're into Heavy 3 or Heavy 4, you can just loop through Heavy 3 and Heavy 4 at your leisure. You can initiate into Rager packs with Heavy 1, Heavy 2, then move into the Heavy 3, Heavy 4 loop to maximize safety while swinging single targets. Outro. Whew. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. We've covered the weapon from top to bottom, including its place in the balance. I've done my best to represent the information as fairly and accurately as I can, but I expect opinions to shift somewhat once this thing hits live. So with that, I'll just ask that if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and share it out with your pals, and maybe give it the old like and subscribe. Thank you so much for visiting. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone in 3, 2, 1. Woo! No, 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 no! Oh, magic! Oh,
We missed it! Missed it! Oh, it's tragic.
Oh my god.
That's amazing. Oh my god.